Hey addicts, welcome back to another book review. This time we're going to be talking about Here to Stay. This is a book that I got a few months back from one of my Amazon monthly picks for free, and I finished it a little while ago, so I wanted to bring a review of it because I think some of it's a bit misleading in terms of how it's listed. On Amazon, it's kind of labeled as a psychological thriller, and you know, not to say it's totally off base, but I just wanted to go into it with a review. This is done, as you can maybe read backwards, by Mark Edwards. I've never heard of this author before. I think, if I remember right, he is a British author, and apparently he's done really well. As you can see there, it says a seller of 2 million copy. So, you know, that's pretty good achievement. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to stay away from spoilers when I'm going through my reviews, so if you're worried about that, you don't have to. I'm just going to read the description off of Amazon for sake of time, and then I'm going to jump into the good and bad. So, with that being said, the tagline for this book, I actually do like the tagline for this. It's called, it says, "A beautiful home, a loving wife, and in-laws to die for." Gemma Robinson comes into Elliot's life like a whirlwind, and they marry and settle into his home. When she asks him if her parents can come to stay for a couple of weeks, he is keen to oblige. He just doesn't quite know what he's signing up for. The Robinsons arrive with Gemma's sister, Chloe, a mysterious young woman who refuses to speak or leave her room. Elliot starts to suspect that the Robinsons are hiding a dark secret, and then there are the scars on his wife's body that she won't talk about. As Elliot's in-laws become more comfortable in his home, encroaching on all aspects of his life, it becomes clear that they have no intention of moving out. To protect Gemma and their marriage, Elliot delves into the Robinsons' past, but is he prepared for the truth? From 2 million copy best author, blah, blah, blah. You got the gist of it. So basically, you know, I'm just going to kind of jump into it and say that I don't really necessarily... If you're looking for a scary or, you know, more of like the horror side of a thriller, this really isn't the book for you. It does dive into some more sinister aspects, but it's not very in your face about it, and they don't really focus a lot of time about it. Most of it is building suspense and maybe tension between the different characters and the situation that's unfolding. So if you're looking for a scary read, I would not recommend this book. I've seen far better executed books, but that's not to say the whole book is bad. I would still say it's a pretty good book, which, you know, a part of the reason why I say it's not the best book is a lot of it has to do with, you know, just this like tropes in these kind of, you know, genre of stories. Whereas, you know, Elliot, the main character, you know, he is, I would say, one of the best characters in the book, as he should be, because he's the main character. But I think when you start getting those tropes in there of like, you know, he's kind of incompetent in, you know, some situations that for his character doesn't make sense. Elliot, it doesn't say in this, and it's not a big spoiler or, you know, a big thing, but Elliot is a scientist. He's a self-made man in some aspect. So he, you know, he's not labeled or depicted as a dumb guy, right? Now there's things, you know, in his personal life, in his past, that have, you know, made him maybe not knowing or maybe a little ignorant to some family type interactions or aspects, but there is some things that are just so bizarre and out of the norm that I think even somebody, given his circumstances, you know, would be like scratching their head or asking questions, if not directly, you know, and not to say he doesn't do that, but it's just the point of, you know, he really slacks off or just, you know, shrugs his shoulders a bit at the beginning, where I think somebody would definitely press a bit more questions. But, you know, that's not an entire negative. It's just one of the things that, you know, is you notice when you read a lot of stories, right? Or that you watch or are exposed to them. I would say the thing that kind of, again, it's like subverting that expectation of, you know, or I guess misleading of, you know, seeing that it's labeled a psychological thriller and then getting all of these quotes from different, I guess, reviewers, people that get actually paid to do this stuff, of you know, saying it's terrifying, thrilling, fantastic ending. A tense, twisted thriller, a darkly delightful gem, and not to say, like I said, it does dive into those more sinister aspects, but they're not dealt with in the, you don't see the action play out in the present. So what I mean by that is that if there is something that's being touched on, it's, except for one instance in the book, most of it is done either outside of Elliot's perspective, which the whole book is from Elliot's perspective. So he either, and also the reader, gets introduced to like what happened, in, basically the aftermath. So we don't actually see any actual acts carry out, if I can't seem to get that across enough. But there's also flashbacks in the book, and they're, in a way, because of the twist that's in the story, it is set up, and so it's not like poorly conceived, but I think it is kind of, not, the potential for the execution could have been a lot better, and it didn't really get to that point, because there's a lot of instances where, for the sake of the twist, we don't get information. And so I guess like that's the whole point of a twist, right? Is that you're given a certain amount of information, but you're not getting all of it. But in a normal twist, you're given a lot of information, but it's in the details, right? In this, it feels like that the twist is, because you weren't given half the story, which is basically the sense of how you feel in the entire book. The other thing that I find kind of frustrating about this book is that the pacing and just like the dividing up of elements or, aspects of different genres that he's wanting to go for. So I think the author does a great job of depicting that kind of, suburban life, having that interaction between your in-laws and stuff like that, or different family members. I don't personally have in-laws, but, everybody sees it at one point, or you hear your friends talk about it or whatever. So I think the author does a really good job of, bringing a sense of realism to those situations. Well, the more lighthearted ones, or the more innocent ones, I should say. But the thing is that this book is like a 380 pages, and I would say it isn't until I marked it down, so I'm not exactly sure because I don't have it with me, but I think it was around like the 150 page mark where we actually get the first signs, or I guess, first glimpse that yes, what he hints at is, correct. Like his hunch is not misplaced. So, having that pacing off or just dragged out with the less interesting parts, it's still really good. So I think it is needed, and there's nothing wrong with a slow burn, but I think the ending really suffers from having that dragged out period at the beginning, because a lot of things, they're not necessarily rushed at the end, but I think there's just a lot of wasted potential in fleshing out something. The other thing is like I said, the horror vibe, or like the thriller part, again, it kind of correlates with the ending, which I'm not going to go into spoilers of. I'll talk broadly about it, but the tension, building suspense in any kind of, horror-related story is really good. It's absolutely necessary, and it's a lot of things that, especially in like horror films today, they don't do. But, building that suspense and tension is only as good as the payoff you give at the end. And, some people can argue, I think it's pretty cut and dry that, and simple, that you do need to have a payoff for there to be, genuine praise. Because if there's no payoff to the story, then it's just kind of a waste of your time, right? At least that's how I see it as, being a consumer. So on the ending, the thing, the twist is fine. It's not something that's going to blow off your socks. And honestly, I think if you're, reading this all in one sitting, it probably will even be more apparent. I read it kind of broken up, so because I had to take breaks because of work and whatnot. So, that might have hindered some of it. But I think that overall, it's just kind of like one of those twists that you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like, because you weren't given the information. So like when he shoehorns the information that leads into like, the reveal of the twist, you're like, oh, okay. But the one thing that I don't like is that we don't really see a payoff for that twist. Now, there is payoff for the interaction and the squabbles and the conflict that's happening beforehand. So he does give a quote-unquote satisfying ending to that part of the book. But I think the twist is probably more so the main focus because of, you'll get it, I'm trying to stay really spoiler-free, but basically, I would have really liked to see the aftermath of revealing that twist because it's something that Elliot doesn't know, and I think it really would have been something that would have elevated this book to the next level if we could have seen like a chapter of him dealing with that aftermath instead of just the alluding of what he plans to do to, you know, solve this problem or face the twist, you know. And yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's like I said, you get a resolution or a payoff to the previously mentioned conflict, but it's just that the twist kind of almost subverts or lessens the impact of the resolution that you got before, and that's why I would have liked to have seen that, tackling of the twist, because I think in a lot of ways it hinders the overall impact of the book. That might be more of a subjective thing, but to me, I think from a story standpoint, you definitely need to have that if you're gonna go for a twist. That's one of the riskiest things about having a twist in a story, right? But with that being said, before I get to my review, I just want to say that, again, 380 pages, so it's not that long of a book. Or it is to me because I'm a slow reader, but for most people that's probably, average for a book. They do have an audio version, so if you're somebody that, like me, reads slowly, or you just like to hear your books like on the go, the audio version that is on Audible was really good. I actually did like it a lot. It's narrated by some British guy, and he does a really good job on the voices. Some of it's funny, but I think it's pretty good. It's a good quality, at least. It doesn't like mess up anywhere, as well as like the printing. On Kindle and Audible, you can get it for basically free if you have any of those accounts. Otherwise, it's like 15 or 8 or whatever. I think when I saw it on Kindle, like if you just wanted to buy it outright but you had a Prime account, I think it was like 2 something. And again, like I got it for free on their monthly thing, so it's bound to pop up there if you're interested in this book. I would say it's still worthwhile checking out if you're interested. It's not a gonna blow your mind, but I think it's a worthwhile read if you're looking for something that I don't know, maybe a good test to, like, if you're wanting to see how far into horror you're wanting to dive into. Like if you're not experienced horror yet in like a book form and you're like wanting to test it out, just get this because it's like not super scary, it's not super long, so you can kind of see. Other than that, I think it's just like a good in-between book, or if you're just like looking for a cheap book to read. But with that being said, my review is I like it, which if anybody's new here, that's a 6 out of 10. I just, it's one that I appreciated, but it's not going to stick in my memory probably for the long term. But with that being said, guys, that's it. Let me know what you guys thought, if you're going to check out the book, if you found this review helpful. We got a bunch of other stuff coming. This is actually something not in the typical norm that we do on the channel, at least as of now. This will be like the first, I guess, widely accepted novel, so or like widely available novel, so that we've done. So if you're interested in other things, we do all pop culture stuff, movies, TV, manga, light novels, comics, and now hopefully starting regular novels too. So keep in mind for that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys next time. So peace, addicts.